Chapter 1 of the Texan Scouts. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit Librivox.org. Recording by Edmonds. The Texan Scouts by Joseph A. Altsheler. Chapter 1. The horsemen rode slowly toward the west, stopping once or twice to examine the wide circle of the horizon with eyes that were trained to note every aspect of the wilderness. On his right, the plains melted away in gentle swell after swell until they met the horizon. Their brown surface was broken only by the spiked and thorny cactus and stray bits of chaparral. On his left was the wide bed of a river, which flowed through the sand, breaking here and there into several streams, and then reuniting, only to scatter its volume 100 yards further into 3 or 4 channels. A bird of prey flew on strong wing over the water, dipped and then rose again, but there was no other sign of life. Beyond, the country southward rolled away, gray and bare, sterile and desolate. The horseman looked most often into the south. His glances into the north were few and brief, but his eyes dwelled long on the lonely land that lay beyond the yellow current. His was an attractive face. He was young, only a boy, but the brow was broad and high, and the eyes, grave and steady, were those of one who thought much. He was clad completely in buckskin, and the hat was wide of brim. A rifle held in one hand lay across the pommel of his saddle, and there were weapons in his belt. 2 light but warm blankets, folded closely, were tied behind him. The tanned face and the lithe, strong figure showed a wonderful degree of strength and health. Several hours passed, and the horseman rode on steadily, though slowly. His main direction was toward the west, and always he kept the river 200 or 300 yards on his left. He never failed to search the plains on either side, but chiefly in the south, with the eager, intent gaze that missed nothing. But the lonesome gray land, cut by the coiling yellow river, still rolled before him, and its desolation and chill struck into his heart. It was the depth of the Texan winter, and, at times, icy gusts, born in far mountains, swept across the plains. The rider presently turned his horse toward the river and stopped on a low bluff overlooking it. His face showed a tinge of disappointment, as if his eyes failed to find objects for which they sought. Again he gazed long and patiently into the south, but without reward. He resumed his wide parallel with the river, but soon stopped a second time, and held up an open hand, like the one who tests the wind. The air was growing perceptibly colder. The strong gusts were now fusing into a steady wind. The day, which had not been bright at any time, was turning darker. The sun was gone, and the far north banks of mist and vapor were gathering. A dreary moaning came over the plain. Ned Fulton, tried and brave though he was, beheld the omens with alarm. He knew what they portended, and in all that vast wilderness he was alone. Not a human being to share the danger with him, not a hand to help. He looked for chaparral, something that might serve as a sort of shelter, but he had left the last clump of it behind, and now he turned and rode directly north, hoping that he might find some deep depression between the swells where he and his horse, in a fashion, could hide. Meanwhile the norther came down with astonishing speed. The temperature fell like a plummet. The moan of the wind rose to a shriek, and cold clouds of dust were swept against Ned and his horse. Then snow mingled with the dust, and both beat upon them. Ned felt his horse shivering under him, and he shivered too, despite his will. It had turned so dark that he could no longer tell where he was going, and he used the wide brim of his hat to protect himself from the sand. Soon it was black as night, and the snow was driving in a hurricane. The wind, unchecked by forest or hill, screamed a sound almost human. Ned dismounted and walked in the lee of his horse. The animal turned his head and nuzzled his master, as if he could give him warmth. Ned hoped that the storm would blow itself out in an hour or two, but his hope was in vain. The darkness did not abate. The wind rose instead of falling, and the snow thickened. It lay on the plain several inches deep, and the walking grew harder. At last the two, the boy and the horse, stopped. Ned knew that they had come into some kind of a depression, and the full force of the hurricane passed partly over their heads. It was yet very dark, and the driving snow scarcely permitted him to open his eyes. But by feeling about a little, he found that on one side of the dip was covered with a growth of dwarf bushes. He led the horse into the lower edge of these, where some protection was secured, and, crouching once more in the lee of the animal, he unfolded the 2 blankets, which he wrapped closely about himself to the eyes. Ned, for the first time since the norther rushed down upon him, felt secure. He would not freeze to death. He would escape the fate that sometimes overtook lone hunters or travelers upon those vast plains. Warmth from the blankets began gradually to replace the chill in his bones, and the horse and the bushes together protected him.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?